Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, being a teen is hard enough, but imagine being a teenager with AIDS. We'll speak to HIV-positive youth about life with the disease. We're going to share a lot of stories with you from young people who have AIDS or have experience living with HIV, so stay tuned for those. We're going to start though via Malika Bala. You're going to get us rolling with this issue.
Right.
What do you have?
Well, one of the biggest hashtags surrounding this issue is out of the UN actually. Take a look at my computer. This is from UNICEF, who writes 30 adolescents are infected with HIV every hour, and you can see here it's a drawn campaign really getting that across, and that hashtag is End Adolescent AIDS. So we want your questions on this for those of you at home. You can tweet us your thoughts with hashtag AJStream.
My name is Jefferson Bethke. I make YouTube videos and I am in the stream.
UNAIDS, UNICEF and several other global agencies have launched the All In campaign to engage young people in the fight against AIDS. By the year 2020, UNAIDS hopes to reduce infections in adolescents by 75%. The number of people newly infected with HIV is on the decline, except among adolescents, and that's 10 to 19-year-olds. Today, AIDS is the second leading cause of death for adolescents around the world and number one in Africa. Take a look at some of the numbers. It's easy to get lost in these statistics, so today we have a lineup of HIV-positive young people to take us beyond the numbers. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Lebakan Matsumi is an HIV activist. Joining us now from Charlottesville, Virginia, Gwen Barringer and Sean Decker, they're HIV educators. In New Delhi, India, Gautam Yadav is an HIV human rights activist. And in Bahia, Brazil, Dr. Carlos Augusto Ladori is a senior technical advisor for HIV and AIDS at Pathfinder International, a family planning and reproductive health organization. Great to have you all here, everybody. Really appreciate you about to share your stories. Let me start with Sean. Sean, when you knew you were HIV positive, you were really young. You were like a little kid. Can you remember back then that first thought you had when you knew?
Yeah, it was really hard. I was diagnosed with HIV when I was 11, and I had actually heard about AIDS just as being this terrible medical condition. So when I found out I was HIV positive, and HIV is the virus that wears down the immune system and leads to an AIDS diagnosis, it scared me like you wouldn't believe. What also scared me was the reaction in my community. This was before there were effective HIV treatments, so my plan was to just ignore it and deal with HIV when I got sick. But I was kicked out of school. A lot of my best friends' parents wouldn't let me come over anymore. So I dealt with a lot of the stigma, and that actually distracted me from the medical reality of HIV for a little bit there.
How did that change you as a little boy? I mean, it's hard to remember back to it when anybody was 11, but when you were 11 and from when you were HIV positive and then when you weren't, did you go for a personality change?
It was a little bit hard because I was also going through puberty. So here I was, just a kid, and then HIV really marked this transition period that I was going to experience anyway. Having HIV along while I was going through puberty and also becoming interested, in sex and all those things, it really made the road a little bit more difficult to navigate.
Let me just bring in Lebakan. She's in Johannesburg. Lebakan, for you, how did you first know that you were HIV positive?
I found out in 2009 on the 15th of August, and the reason for testing was because at the time my partner had heard rumors that I dated someone who had passed on from HIV and AIDS. So I tested in 2009 on the 15th of August, and the time was 1:30. A day I'll never forget in my life.
Whoa, I can tell from the way you talk about it, it's seared in your brain. When you were testing and then you found out the results, can you take us through that emotional journey that you went through? Can you articulate it for us?
Well, I think because HIV at the time was really a taboo, right? And I came from a suburb area in Johannesburg, and HIV was not for me. HIV was for people in the rural areas. Why am I saying that? Because of what the media was sending out at the time. Because I would see one person in undeveloped areas who's looking really sick. And here I am, at the time I was 21 when I found out. I was 20. And I live in the suburbs. I went to a good school. It actually just didn't belong in my life, if I'm making sense. And it took me a very long time to then actually accept my status.
Malika?
Well, we asked online what it means to our community members to get an HIV diagnosis as an adolescent, and we actually heard several responses. This is one of them. This is from Give Me, who writes, devastating, especially without a good counselor around. So Gautama, I'm wondering, in your experience, was it devastating like this person writes in, and how did you break the news to those around you?
When I was 17-year-old, I was a bit confused about my sexuality, and then somehow I found it that the term called gay, and then I came out to my parents as a gay person. And after that I realized that I went to some community-based organization, and I get in touch with some counselor, and then I came to know about my this counselor told me to get tested and know about your status, and then I went for HIV testing, and that's how I came to know that I am HIV positive. So that was quite difficult for me.
So you'll see that Gwen and Sean are sitting there together because they are a couple, a romantic couple, I should add. I'm asking a personal question now. This is a very personal show. Sean, how did you tell Gwen when you were deciding that you wanted to date her that you were HIV positive?
Well, in our case, that was very easy.
Yeah.
You know, from my diagnosis from 11 to 20, I didn't talk about HIV with anybody. I hated going to my doctor's appointments. I just was not dealing with it at all. At 20, I decided to put up a website and started blogging about HIV. And so when I met Gwen a few years later, I was already educating, and people would meet me, strangers, and say, "What do you do?" I'd say, I'm a writer. What do you write about? I write about living with HIV. So Gwen actually was looking for someone someone with HIV, because she's an HIV educator, to
Not
go in
to
and,
date originally.
to go in and talk to high school students. And so a local AIDS organization put us in touch, and so I actually bombed the interview. She wasn't going to use me.
Yeah, so I knew even before I met Sean that he was HIV positive, because I was looking for someone who was positive for a research project. So the disclosure wasn't an issue in our case.
Sure. And then I know a lot of people are going to be thinking, all right, so you weren't originally romantically inclined, but then you knew about his status. And we hear a lot about stigma as well. Was there anything that put you off about hooking up with Sean at all?
I was very educated about HIV when I met Sean, but it certainly wasn't easy to make that decision to enter into the relationship, because I had friends and family that were supportive, but I also had people in my life that just were kind of like, why would you date someone with HIV? There's all these other people out there, why that person? And so, it took me a bit of time to kind of come to terms with it and say, you know what, he's a person and he has a medical condition, but he's still a person, and that person's really awesome, and I think I want to be with that person.
Carlos, one of the things that Sean mentioned a little bit earlier was that stigma, and something that Gwen was just talking about also. On Twitter, Mustafa says that stigma has become the most worrisome aspect to people living with HIV, and he wants to know, what are some of the efforts being made to tackle the menace? You've done this work for many years now. What is it about the stigma that still exists?
I think the stigma is, I would say, the most difficult barrier to go through. You see, we are reaching so many technological achievements in terms of treatment, on viral load being zero, and like Sean and Gwen being a couple steroid-discordant that can have a normal and pleasurable sexual life without the fear of getting infected, but still the stigma is there. And what I would like to say is that, I know that these three incredible persons that are joining us in the program now are very important activists in their own country. But we need to remember that a great majority of adolescents that have the virus are not supported by any social environment. So the way they tackle the stigma that is very painful to them is something that you have no idea how young people suffer. You know, those 3 people are people that are empowered, but I'm sure they know a lot of kids that are there without the family support, social support, friend support, and they suffer a lot, not because of the virus, but because of the stigma.
Lebakam, as Carlos was talking, you were nodding and recognizing that. I mean, HIV is a major problem in Southern Africa and in South Africa in particular. Why do you think so many young people are still being infected after all of these years?
I think it's because of ignorance. Because I think as young people, we only care about something once it happens to us, or once it affects us directly. And I think it's also not opening up yourself to other things, or reading about things because you think you don't care about it. And again, I think also the stigma is really about how HIV was introduced to us. And I think we're still trying to get over what was introduced to us 30 years back, and we're still fighting that struggle, just like Carlos was saying.
I'm trying to think, Gautam, what is it about young people that makes them difficult for them as a group of people to make them aware of HIV, AIDS, and the dangerous nature of unsafe sex? In your experience as an HIV activist, how would you say, well, these are the challenges with young people in particular? This is how they behave, and this is how the problem has got so big.
I personally think one of the challenges is our clinics, because young people are now afraid to go to a clinic and talk to someone who's who's the same age as their parents, and try and disclose to them that I'm having sex at this age. And because already you are being stigmatized that you are having sex at a young age, and now you also have to deal with other challenges, we don't have really friendly youth services. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that young people face.
And Gautam, in India, I mean, there's a whole different set of challenges, but share a couple with them. And I want to ask you a couple of questions about how sexual education may or may not help.
I want to give some examples. Like there's one best example which I was sharing with one of my friends. This is from Gujarat, a state in India. There's one school of government school where the capacity of the school is 252 kids, but there 32 kids are positive, and they were diagnosed with HIV. And after them coming into the school, the parents of the negative kids, they removed their children from the school, and they just said that if my child will study with those people, then maybe my child will get affected. If they are going to eat together, then my child will get affected, and if they will play together, then something can happen. So what they did is, like, they removed all the kids, and now 32 kids are studying in that school, and that school is only running for those 32 girl childs. And another is like for example, treatment for the adolescent and youth is a very important thing, which sometimes we feel discriminated. If, like, for example, if adolescent or young people visit to the hospital, then doctor think that you must have done something wrong, that is why you got HIV. Or if you are from the MSM community, or if you are from the transgender community, then people will look you like that you are a criminal, or that 377 act is there, which bound us to get the treatment and talk to the doctor or counselor freely. Because if we feel like if we talk about our sexual activities, then maybe they can just say this thing that you are under a criminal law. So
sure.
These are the few things which bound us, you know.
Gauteng?
Yes.
Yes, Carlos here. Yes. I'm interested to pose you a question, because I know that in India the law on homosexuality has changed in the recent past. Do you think that this change of the political environment has contributed to decrease the vulnerability of gay Indian young guys to the HIV infection, or you still don't see any impact on the reduced vulnerability of Indian gay guys?
See, I think for the most of the time, if we talk about the political leaders and political parties, they always try to fix up their agendas in the any kind of things related to HIV, related to the law, related to human rights or anything. They just wanted to fix up their agenda into that. So I don't think that any of the political party have done anything till now, but there are few political parties who are now came up and who are supporting for the 377, and they are saying that law should go away from the country because these are the people who are getting affected because of this law.
Okay, and 377 was an act that banned homosexuality. Let me just push on a little bit and head back to our online community.
Well, looking at the Streams app, there are a lot of people that say there's not enough information about this for adolescents, and that's why we see such a rise in this. To weigh in on that, of course, you can download the app, as I have here. Go to streams.aljazeera.com and vote in our poll and let us know what you think on that. But people on Twitter are also weighing in on that same topic. So Sean Willis says, when you hear that there's not enough information, he wants to know how we should introduce such a subject to adolescents infected. Is there a standard, softer, and effective approach? And one of the things you do, of course, as an educator, is you have a YouTube channel. Is that the best way, do you think, to reach that audience?
Yeah, Gwen and I started our YouTube channel because we do a lot of talks at colleges and universities and events in the United States. We wanted to have a broader reach, and we felt like we want to reach that teenager who has internet access, who has the computer, and who has the privacy of a room or somewhere where they can obtain that information. And so that's why we really made the YouTube channel, was for this specific purpose, to reach people. And to be honest, I do feel like, for younger people, a softer message is good, but I think one of the problems is, this soft message thing just has not worked. We really have to be honest, and we have to engage in young people. And young people ask more questions up to a certain point than anybody else, and then people kind of become quiet during their teenage years, probably when they should be asking more questions. So I really feel like the younger they are, the more we should tap into their inquisitive nature, answer questions, give them examples. The All In campaign is about, trying to combat this death rate for people between the ages of 10 and 19. That's just terrible. I'm fortunate I work with Staying Alive Foundation. They help young people educate and do prevention messages worldwide. And I think we really just got to enlist young people. We got to give them the information and give them the confidence to share that information within their communities.
And I think if you're someone who's very open and willing to answer whatever questions they have, they will ask the questions. And if you give them correct answers, they will take that information back to their friends.
That's true.
Yeah, and then sometimes you have to say, I don't know the answer to that. Talk to my friend Carlos.
Well, you see, I think what Sean is saying, I think it's very important. Because my organization, Pathfinder International, what we try to do is to have an approach that in terms of prevention of HIV among adolescents, we believe that it must be a multi-sectorial approach. We cannot only work with the health sector. We need to work with education, with sports, with culture, you see, at the community level, at the health facility level, because you see there are also so interdependent factors that contribute to the knowledge of kids. I used to say that the knowledge of young kids are just like a pizza with many slices. We cannot control all the slices. One slice can come from friends, one slice of information can come from the internet, one slice can come from bad influences, but parents and educators need to be responsible, at least for one slice. One slice of good information, we need to be responsible. So I think it's very important that parents, health educators, teachers, religious leaders contribute to one slice.
Let me get a good slice.
It's also,
go ahead, guys.
In schools, they have, reading programs where, students read a book, and then if they complete it, they get a sticker. Why not introduce a thing where they read a book that's about HIV, and then if they complete it, they get a red ribbon sticker, and then they can wear it around, and people say, what is that?
Exactly.
Well, I read this book, and here's what I learned about HIV. So just incorporating in things that are already there.
Let me get a good... go ahead, Carlos, go ahead.
I have a question to Sean. I'm sorry. Should I go?
Yeah, go ahead, Carlos,
Sorry.
and then Lebo we'll come back to you.
Yes, very quick question to Sean. Sean, my organization is based in Boston, United States, but I work basically in Southern Africa, where the epidemics is so important. My question to you is this: do you think the adolescents that are living with HIV in the United States, do they have a good grasp of how the epidemics affect young people in Africa, for example?
It would be hard to speak on that, but I do think there maybe isn't they can't relate to the reality of somebody else dealing with it. I think a lot of adolescents who are HIV positive in the United States are dealing with it the same way I did when I was their age. They just don't want to think about it, don't want to talk about it. They have access to HIV medications in most cases, so they keep their health up, but at the same time, the emotional side of things, I don't think they're quite able to deal with their own situation, and then maybe when they get a little bit older, they'll be able to look around and see what's going on with other people their age around the world.
Let me bring in Lebo, who's in Johannesburg. Lebo, what did you want to add?
I wanted to jump in about spreading the message amongst young people or adolescents. Well, what I actually believe and what I do in South Africa is I think it's more about or I think it's more important that we empower the person who's HIV positive, because once you empower me to talk about my status, I won't be now spreading it or not being afraid to talk about it, because I think we have now forgotten those who are living with HIV and are now wanting to concentrate on those who are not living with it. Yes, they're important, but then if you empower me as someone who's HIV positive, I'm able to teach my friends and talk about my status openly. I run a campaign called I'm Greater Than HIV, where I go to schools and I do this with the Democratic Alliance in the Midrand constituency, which is run by Dion George. And what we do is we empower young people that are infected and those who are not infected, so that they can all have a conversation and they can all sit during lunch and say, hey, you forgot to take your medication, and some stuff like that.
And also, that's exactly true. If you empower people who are HIV positive, they are much, much, much less likely to infect other people. A recent statistic just came out that if people are not in treatment or not tested, that's when people get infected. But if they are in treatment and taking care of themselves, then they're not going to infect others.
Let me just check back in with the community. We're almost at the end of this part of the show.
Well, actually, it's this message of empowerment that I wanted to turn to, because we did get this tweet from Osman, and he says, in my community, it's like a death sentence. The fear of testing alone is that death sentence. But then we heard this message from someone who's living with HIV. This is a video comment. I'd like you all to have a listen to this.
Hi, my name is Tsepongwata from South Africa, a 23-year-old, one positive, and I've been living with the virus my whole life. My mother passed away 2000, and my dad, the same year, he did not pass away, he ran away. And I've never been discouraged about my status, and I've been living a healthy life and just been motivating others to do the same. Let's just change the way we live and change the way how we see our future.
Kind of inspiring message there.
Thank you very much to online community for being part of this conversation. We're not done yet. If you've got questions for Sean and Gwen or Gautam or Carlos or Lebokan, it's not too late. You can actually come with us to the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. I want to show you something that really struck out at me. This is a group who are in Harare, Zimbabwe, and they're all youngsters or children who are HIV positive, and the message in their song is really, really impressive. I'm just going to play you a little bit and look at the faces. Look how young they are. Check this out. We'll be talking more about HIV, AIDS and adolescents around the world in the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. I just have time now to tell you about our next AJ stream, and we're looking at sacred land, secret legislation and billions of dollars, and we'll tell you why all of this has some Native Americans fighting against copper mining giants. That conversation is for our next AJ stream show. See you there. Thanks for watching. Hello again. We're speaking to HIV positive youth about life with the illness. So I'm going to get right back to that conversation. I would like to talk to you all about daily life, living with HIV, and what that's like. How does that impose on your life? How do you actually go about everyday life? Let's start with Gautam. Gautam, tell us about everyday life. How is being HIV positive in New Delhi, India? How is that a challenge, or maybe it's not?
When I diagnosed with HIV, that time it was a huge challenge for me, because it took me 3 years to take my life on track, because I was first self-stigmatized, and then I was thinking that now I'm going to die soon, because I was not having much information about HIV and AIDS, and I was never ever study about HIV and AIDS in my colleges or school time. And that is the situation right today also. No one get information about the sex, sexuality, gender and HIV and AIDS.
So where did you get your information from, Gautam? How did you learn about your own illness?
Like when I, as I said, that when I came to know about that my sexuality, and after that I got in touch with some CBOs, and there I went and I spoke to a few counselors, and those told me that LGBT community is more high risk population, so you should go and get tested, and that's how I came to know about HIV and AIDS. And then it took me 1 year to go and get tested, and then I came to know about my result that I'm HIV
I still don't
positive.
have a better insight, Gautam, into your daily life. I have to say that Sean and Lebo and yourself, Gautam, you look unbelievably healthy and gorgeous looking. So there must be something that you're doing as a regime
Thank you.
that's actually making you stay. Because if we went back even 10 or 15 years ago, I don't think you'd look like this. I don't even know if you'd be on the show with us. So what is it?
Femi?
Yeah, go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, I think, they are the reflect of what happens in nowadays when empower individuals, be it adolescents or adults, adhere to the treatment, have good nutrition, and take care of their health.
Right.
And this is reflective of every health situation, not only HIV. You see, so I think they are examples that should be given to all people. And, and it's funny because you still hear, we just heard from your colleague, that HIV/AIDS diagnosis was a death sentence. It's not anymore. It should not be anymore. You see?
I think
but we still have, go ahead, please.
Lebogan, I hear you saying that it's not a death sentence, so I want to direct this tweet that we got for you. This is Ahmed who writes living with HIV. Let me just read this tweet. He says, living with HIV is not a problem, but the problem is when your parents and your close friends leave you alone just because you're infected. Did you face any of that?
No, I didn't, because my parents and my friends are very supportive. Yes, there are people I tell about my status and they choose to stay away. But I always tell people that it's not about you, it's about them, because they don't have any knowledge about HIV and AIDS. And I think also a lot of people have a problem with stigmatization, just like Carlos was saying.
Yeah.
And with me, is I've got a very positive mind. I don't exercise because I'd be lying to you if I said I exercise. I eat healthy here and there, but I think what actually keeps me going is really my positive mind and my ARVs, because I don't even like veggies. I'm not going to lie and say I take my vegetables. I try, but then everything is just in my mind. And I really believe that HIV is really mental than it is physical and everything else. And once you've got your mind straight, then everything else is perfectly fine.
So if I just think about exercise, Lebo, then do you think I'll be fit? If I just think positively about going to the gym but don't actually go, I can look like you.
I'll try.
All right.
I think something which is making me positive and energetic, that is my work for the people who are living with HIV.
Okay.
And the things which I do, I feel satisfied. And I always say this thing that I always treat HIV virus as a friend, because my parents will leave me one day, my friends will leave me one day, but this virus is going to stay with me till the time I die, you know.
It will never leave you. It's always there with you.
Best friend. And I feel blessed when I see this thing, that because of this virus, because of my HIV status. I'm advocating people. I'm doing so many things now. I'm sitting in more than 6 organizations, some in core working committee, board members, and like recently I became a steering committee member for Y+, which is initiated by global network of people living with HIV, in that we make policies and other things, and that is global network and UNAIDS. So I'm like, my age is 24 and I traveled in like almost 5
Gautam, now you're just showing off, right? You're just showing off. Let me bring in Sean for a moment, because he's trying to get in past all of your amazing accolades. All right, Sean, go ahead. What did you want to add?
I just wanted to say, yeah, I can relate to the experiences of everybody speaking on HIV today, what it's like to live with it. The mental thing is definitely part of it. I was diagnosed when there weren't any effective treatments available yet. And, you know, I didn't talk about HIV for a long time. And then right after Gwen, I fell in love. That's when I got sick. And I started on HIV meds, and that's how I keep my health up. I take my HIV meds. I have a positive attitude about life in general, I always have. So that really came into play when I started to get my health back. And I just want to say, this speaks to something Carlos said earlier about stigma and everything else. I think if I'd gotten sick before I opened up about my status, I may have been less inclined to take HIV meds, because that would have been a daily reminder of something I didn't want to be reminded of. And I think I may not have made it. I'm so thankful that I crossed that self-stigmatization line, you know, before I got sick, because I think it would have been a very different outcome for me.
Guys, help me out here. Gwen and Sean, because I've heard self-stigmatization 3 times so far, and I'm not even too sure what it is. Can you explain that?
It's about taking outside information about, you know, you don't have a chance, you're not worthy of love,
you can't have a relationship. Believing the hype.
All of this because you're HIV positive. It's even things that, it can be things that have never been said to you, but you've just absorbed it through jokes or through just banter.
Media.
Media, just conversations you've heard from friends or strangers even, or on TV. It's crazy.
You internalize that message.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
What I think is very important, you see, besides having a family or a partner or a community that supports you, we cannot forget that the ARVs are most of the times available in the health facility, and sometimes the health facilities are not prepared to have the adolescents coming and feeling in a friendly environment. My organization has been working a lot in improving the friendliness of services that work with adolescents, not only on understanding HIV, but also understanding human sexuality, sexual orientation, gender identities, GBV, needs in family planning. You see, the health provider that works with adolescents needs to have a very open mind, so the adolescents feel comfortable in sharing with the nurse or the doctor whatever problems he has.
Yeah, judgment is the fastest way to get adolescents to run and not take care of themselves and their health. If you're judgmental, they're going to go the other direction.
Yeah. Gwen, I'm so glad you said that, actually, because we got a couple of tweets from people who said, that's the case, this is what we should do about it. So Keela writes in, there's a special emphasis must be put on how to treat adolescents who are HIV positive, but most ads depict older couples and not parents and child. Another person writes in that the pitfall is of showing only dying HIV/AIDS patients in campaigns. It kills people mentally. How about showing healthy patients who will be better? And Femi, this is something we talked about in our meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to show you a little clip from an MTV public health campaign, and their public health campaign is called Staying Alive. Sean already mentioned that he's part of this whole push. And this, I don't want to spoil the ending of this ad, but basically you have a young woman, you have a young man, and as you get closer and closer to them maybe actually having a relationship, the idea is that they stay safe, that they look up information, that they engage in intimacy that's safe, and they're using condoms. But look at the pictures. They're vibrant, they're young, they're appealing, they're not dying in some tiny little village somewhere in the developing world. This is a very Labour. We've both seen these ads, haven't we? This is the idea that being safe and being intimate with each other is actually, dare I use the word, it's sexy, right? Condoms are literally sexy. Does that thinking change the way that maybe young people might adjust their behaviour in South Africa, Labour, do you think?
Can you please come again?
Yeah, the idea that if you
Can you
make...
please repeat that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you make campaigns more appealing, you put young people in them, you keep them vibrant, is that a good way of actually sharing that safe sex message, safe education message? Sex education message.
Not only is it a good way, it's perfect, because I think young people like education and entertainment. So the more vibrant and the more relevant it is to young people, then they're obviously going to want to be part of it and listen to whatever it is that's happening.
So you have a little
Because we don't want pamphlets with information and stats and information. We just want reader-friendly information and viewer-friendly shows to watch.
See, we've been having a really upbeat conversation, all of us, and I've been really intrigued listening to you and how positive you are about being HIV positive. But Lebo Khan, you have a little girl. She is HIV negative. When she gets to be older, how do you propose to keep her safe?
I think it will just be by me sharing my experiences and not hiding anything from her. And I think when she is probably 10 or so, I'll start talking openly to her about sex, because we never got that. You know, there was a whole taboo about sex. It was a no-go area. And I think when we start talking openly about sexual activities and teaching our kids about the safe way and giving them their own choices to make. If I'm going to tell my daughter that this is you have sex and you use a condom and you protect yourself, it's up to her what she does, but then I know that she will protect herself, because I can't stop her from doing it when she's older, but I must just teach her how to do it safely.
See, I'm looking.
So I'll definitely teach her how to do it and how to keep herself safe.
Carlos, yes, go ahead.
Yes, I think what Lebo Khan is saying is so true. You see, if we remember the beginning of the epidemics many years ago in 81, 82, first the gay men were very vocal. Then the governments treated the adults, and then the mothers, and then the babies. And adolescents are the very last one that is still suffering the impact of the epidemics. And I think my personal idea is because of some of the hypocrisy of dealing with sexuality of young people. You see, this is very difficult for many people.
Right.
You see, and because of that, this group that is so vulnerable are still dying much more than any other group that has the infection.
Right. I wish I could clone all of the guests today and send them around the world. I think they'd fix it very quickly before 2020 even. UN, pay attention.
Please do.
So we've had Sean Decker and Gwen Barringer. We've had Gautam Yadav. We have Lebo Khan Matsumi and also Carlos Augusto Ladori. It's been a pleasure having you talking about HIV and AIDS in the adolescent populations around the world. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your experiences, your stories. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
So, bye-bye. Good to have you. On the next show, sacred land, secret legislation, and billions of dollars. We will tell you why all of this has some Native Americans fighting against copper mining giants. That conversation on the next AJ stream. See you soon.